Hi everyone, Janie here. Welcome back to my garden and welcome to the fifth and final installment in the series I've been doing with proven winners called Building the Foundations of a Successful Garden. We have been focusing on education, not so much on the actual plants, but the actual foundational aspects of your garden so that when you do go spend your hard-earned money on those plants, you can plant them in your garden, and not only are they going to survive, but they are going to thrive. So way back in November, I started with the first video on soil, and I truly think that is probably the most important video of this whole series because soil truly is the foundation of your garden, and you have to understand your soil to understand what you need to do to it, or how you need to manage it, or what plants you need to choose for your soil. So I will link all of these videos in the description down below, and I encourage you all to check them out. So after my soil video, then we started talking about water requirements, we started talking about light requirements, and we finally in February got to site-specific issues, which is something I don't think a lot of people talk about enough because all of our gardens are different. None of our gardens are the same, and you can watch my garden on YouTube and see the issues that I have going on in my garden, but they're not going to be the same issues you have going on in your garden. So it's really important to be able to identify and understand the site-specific issues that you have in your garden. Now we're on to March. It is getting very, very close to spring. I am so excited, and we are on to plant selection. How do you choose the right plant for your garden? How do you choose which plant you're going to purchase? How do you choose which type of plant you're going to purchase? There's all these questions, especially when you go to a garden center and you're kind of overwhelmed by all the beauty that's there in the spring. So in this video, we're going to dive a little bit deeper, and we're going to talk about 5 tips that I have for you for selecting the right plant for your garden. So the first tip I have for all of you for selecting the right plant for your garden is kind of building on the previous videos in this series, and that is understanding the environment of your garden, understanding the environmental issues specifically. Do you have watering issues? Do you have drainage issues? Do you have weird lighting requirements in a particular garden bed in your garden? Figure out what issues you're dealing with, and then find a plant that is going to be able to handle those issues or thrive in those issues even. So for example, one issue I often come across in my gardens is lighting. I live in zone 9B, and our gardening season is very, very long. I plant my plants in late winter. My last frost is February 28th, and those plants stay in the ground all the way through November, sometimes even early December. So you can imagine the sun in the winter, it is very low in the sky, and some of my garden beds are full shade at that time. But then as it gets later into the season, the sun rises and my full shade garden bed suddenly becomes a full sun garden bed. So what plant do I plant in a garden bed that's full shade and full sun? Well, let me introduce you to Surefire Rose Begonia, one of my favorite plants from Proven Winners. The reason why I love this plant is not only for these beautiful pink blooms that you don't have to deadhead, they bloom from planting all the way to first frost. This plant can handle full shade or full sun. So I don't have to worry about whether my garden bed has shade or sun or what time of year it is. I know if I plant this plant there, it's going to survive and it's going to thrive. And Proven Winners has just come out with another color, Surefire White, and I am so excited to get that in my garden. Another issue that you might be dealing with in your garden environment is drainage. Sometimes drainage is a big problem for people. But did you know that there are many plants that can handle not only dry conditions, but also wet conditions? Again, let me introduce you to Toucan Canna Lily. It comes in 3 colors. It comes in coral, scarlet, and yellow. And these plants are amazing because not only can they handle dry conditions, almost drought conditions, but they can also handle water. They can handle sitting in water for short periods of time. So when you choose plants like toucan coral canna or toucan scarlet canna and put them in an area where you know sometimes you get standing water, maybe after a summer rain, you know that that plant is going to be so happy and it's going to be able to handle whatever water issues you have. I want to introduce you to the advanced plant search on the Proven Winners website. This is a tool that I use all the time. It is a plant search that you can go in and you can click certain boxes for whatever issue you have going on. Whether you have poor drainage, whether you have salt, maybe you live by the ocean, whether you need full shade, full sun, just click the boxes that you need and it will come up with a selection of plants that will fulfill that problem site that you have in your garden. So I use this advanced plant search all the time, and I recommend all of you to use it as well. Tip number 2 I have for all of you for selecting the right plants for your garden is to understand your garden goals. Your garden goals. I can't tell you what your garden goals are. It's not something you can learn from the internet. It's something that you have to figure it out yourself. You have to figure out which type of gardens appeal the most to you. So there are so many different styles of gardens. There are the very formal English style gardens. There are the more casual cottage style gardens. There are the very private gardens that are enclosed and you almost feel like you're in a secret garden. And then there are the gardens that I aspire to, which I sometimes will call the Snow White gardens. And those are the ones that have pollinators, birds, bees, butterflies, hummingbirds, absolutely everywhere. So when you walk through that garden, you literally feel like Snow White. So my garden goals are to have a very pollinator heavy garden, and I'm going to choose a plant that is good for pollinators and will attract pollinators. One plant that I'm really excited to select for my garden is Estrelita scarlet firecracker bush. This shrub is amazing because it has these red tubular flowers that are going to attract all the hummingbirds in my area and bring them into my garden. Estrelita scarlet will bloom for months and months and months, so my hummingbirds will be happy and I will be happy because I will feel like Snow White. If you're not really interested in pretending to be Snow White, maybe you want to have more of a secret garden feel in your garden. Maybe you're looking for privacy from your neighbors. I want to introduce you to a plant that's actually not coming out until next year. So put it on your list for next year. It's definitely on my list. It's called Yardline viburnum. This plant is so low maintenance, you don't have to do anything to it. It's hardy zone 7 through 9. The reason why this plant is so cool though, is that it gets 12 feet tall, but only 4 feet wide. So think about that. 12 feet tall, but 4 feet wide. It is so tall and is so narrow. If you plant a hedge of those, you're basically going to have a living wall. So if you have neighbors that you kind of want to disappear, this plant is going to be the plant for you that's going to be so amazing, and it's going to give you the privacy you need. I really want to get this plant and put it at the front of my garden. I live along a street where people drive very fast and it's kind of busy. So I would love to plant these for privacy and kind of pretend like that street is just not there. Tip number 3 I have for all of you for selecting the right plants for your garden is to determine your color story. What colors do you want in your garden? What colors speak to you? For some people, they like really cool colors in their garden, like blues and purples and whites. Some people like the really hot colors, like reds and oranges and yellows. I want to say this with a big asterisk because I want to remind you all that there is such thing as a color story of all the colors. And that is where you just plant all of the colors and you love it so much. That is my color story. I have tried to stick with a certain palette with colors, but then I just find I love all the colors, and the brighter, the better. So I just want to give you all permission that it is okay to have all the colors as your color story. But it's something that you want to determine before you start selecting your plants. One color story that I'm really excited about this year is a complementary color story of purple and orange. So if you look at a color wheel, you'll notice that purple and orange are across from each other. That makes them complementary colors, and that makes them both pop off of each other. And so if I chose, not if, I chose a hot and cold Kniphofia, which is this beautiful orange plant. It has spiky flowers, amazing blooms, drought tolerant, heat tolerant. That is going to pair beautifully with denim and lace Russian sage. Denim and lace Russian sage, it smells beautiful. The foliage smells beautiful. It's hardy zones 4 through 9. So most likely it's going to be hardy in your zone. And pairing these two together is going to give an absolutely beautiful color story. And I'm so excited to have it in my garden. So determine which color story speaks to you. One thing I want to tell you all, and I want you all to remember, is if you can't decide, remember annuals. Annuals, you can change the color story every year if you want. In my last property, I had a front swoop that I reserved for annuals only. And each year I changed up my colors depending on my mood. So one time I had bubblegum pink, another time I had the bright fuchsia, purpley color of Supertunia Vista Jazzberry. And then I also had a year where I had all yellows, which made me so very happy. So if you can't decide which colors you want long term, I encourage you to try out some annuals to see which colors of the annuals speak to you. So then you can choose your perennials and shrubs for more long-term color. All right, tip number 4 is consider year-round interest. It is something that is so important. We often go out into the garden and start gardening in spring. And so in spring, everything's blooming, everything's looking beautiful, but then you get into summer, things stop blooming, you get into fall and winter, and you have no interest in your garden. So just make sure you remember that you need to have year-round interest. You're going to be so happy. One of the things I'm doing this year is I am focusing on each month and making sure that I have at least one plant that is going to be blooming each month of the year. So I know I have something in my garden that's going to be blooming every month that I can enjoy. So again, go to the advanced plant search on Proven Winners and you can click whether it's fall interest you're looking for, whether it's early spring interest you're looking for, whatever it is, you can choose. Okay, tip number 5, the last tip I have for all of you for selecting the right plant for your garden is to do your research. Do your research, understand what plants are out there, and understand what cultivars are out there. So what do I mean by this? Let's take, for example, the petunia. The petunia, we all know the petunia. It's beautiful. It's such a happy, lovely plant. You can grow it from seed. You can buy it from the grocery store, or you can buy a Proven Winners supertunia. And what's the difference between all of these? There's a huge difference because one of the reasons why I love Proven Winners so much is they've taken the time to select a specific cultivar of a petunia and they've called it a supertunia. And so this is a plant that I know I'm not going to need to deadhead. It's going to be incredibly vigorous and it's going to bloom all season long. So if I take a petunia I grow from seed or a petunia that's called a supertunia, they're going to be two very different plants, even though they're both called petunias. Another really good example I like to tell people to understand the different cultivars is Verbena bonariensis. Verbena bonariensis is a gorgeous, gorgeous purple plant. It almost looks like a fairy wand with a little purple ball on the tip of a long stem. It's gorgeous. And it is incredibly easy to grow from seed. I know because I've done it before in my garden. The problem with Verbena bonariensis is that it reseeds like crazy. All over your garden. It is like a weed. And once I planted Verbena bonariensis, I had little seedlings coming up in my garden everywhere. And I decided I was never going to plant that plant again. When I learned about a different cultivar from Proven Winners called Meteor Shower Verbena, it's the same plant. It's a Verbena bonariensis, but Proven Winners has selected this specific cultivar to not set seed. So it is not going to reseed itself in your garden. I'm still get to enjoy Verbena bonariensis in my garden, but I don't have to worry about it reseeding itself. Meteor Shower Verbena also is a little bit more manageable in size, so it's easier to put into your garden, and it's just a beautiful plant. So by doing the research and by understanding what's out there, I'm not just say no to Verbena bonariensis from now on because it reseeds itself like crazy, I now understand that there is a cultivar, meteor shower verbena, that can easily go in my garden and I can enjoy it every year from now on. So I really encourage you all to do your research, understand the different cultivars, and understand the differences between the plants that are out there. All right, so that is it. Those are my 5 tips for selecting the right plant for your garden. If I missed anything, or if you have learned anything in your gardening journey that you want to share with all of us, make sure you put it in the comments section down below. Check out the Proven Winners website, check out the advanced search or the plant search page so that you can select the right plant for your garden and whatever issues that you have going on. I promise you're going to find a beautiful plant there that's going to thrive now that you know the foundations of a successful garden. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you all have a chance to get in your garden today.